All right, so now we are going to look at the passage, Jacques Cousteau. All right, go ahead and start reading for us. Jacques des Cousteau.
Jacques Cousteau decided his life
Dedicated.
dedicated his life to helping people learn about the sea. He was born in a small village in France on June 11, 1910. Cousteau was a sickly child, but his parents insisted that he learn how to swim at a young age. Little did they realize how important this would be to Cousteau in the world later in his life.
As he grew up, Cousteau was not a good student. However, he was smart and quite curious about things that interested him. For example, as teenagers, he took a part in boot camp because he wanted to know how it worked.
In 1933, Cousteau was nearly killed in a car accident. To recover from his injuries, he started to swim in the
Mediterranean.
Sea each day. A friend lent him a pair of goggles so he could get closer and look at his feet. Cousteau began to study sea life very closely at this time.
During World War II, Cousteau met a roommate, Jacques. Emily was also interested in the sea because they wanted to study life underwater. Cousteau and Jacques worked on a system that would allow them to stay under the water for a longer time. Their first automated device was a success.
Around this time, Cousteau also helped develop a camera that works underwater. These two inventions helped Cousteau to film his first documentary or fact-based film about the sea.
In 1950,
In 1960, Cousteau earned a British steel
vessel.
vessel into a research ship and named the
Calypso.
Cousteau, working with the National
Geographic
Geographic Society.
Society.
Cousteau used the
Calypso.
Cousteau to film several more films about
His television series, A Missing World of Jacques Cousteau, was launched in 1967. This program ran for 1 year and helped millions of people learn a great deal about marine life. During his work, Cousteau began to see how human activities was hurt the ocean. He created environmental activists. The person who raises
Awareness.
awareness about issues that harm the environment. Over the next few decades, Cousteau wrote the book and made it hard to get attention about the ocean. Human are intellectual and complex. He called the gold especially in 1973 to raise money for a wilderness or Lamborghini. In January 1996, the galley
Calypso.
Calypso was accidentally destroyed when it was hit by a larger ship. Cousteau began raising funds to build a new ship. Before he could make that happen, he
died.
died unexpectedly on June 25th, 1997. He was 87 years old. The world was saddened by his death, but grateful for his many contributions to science.
Okay? So, first thing I want to look at is what kind of passage is this?
Information.
This is an informational passage. I get information from it. Okay? Now, I want to kind of look at the overall text structure of it. So let's start with paragraph 1. All right, so remember text structures, when we're looking at that, we're looking at 5 different ones. You've got compare and contrast, problem and solution, you've got cause and effect, you have chronological order, and you have description. So looking back at this passage, do we think that this is a compare and contrast? It's not really comparing and contrasting anything, is it? All right, do we think it's a problem and a solution? There's no problem, so there's no problem to be solved. Well, later on, you could argue that part of that is a solution to a problem about the ocean. Right. All right, so now let's look at cause and effect. Do we see a cause and effect relationship here? Kind of, maybe. Okay, could be. Let's look at the next one. Chronological order. Chronological order means I could take the events from this passage and I could make a timeline.
There is a lot of dates.
All right, so I could start off with when he was born, which was June 11th, 1910. I don't see any other dates there. I don't see any dates in that. 1933. World War II. That gives me a time frame during World War II. That gives me a time frame because I know that ranged between specific dates. And then 1950. And then if I turn over, 1968. 1973, 1996, and 1997. Okay? So I could create a timeline, which means that this was overall organized in what kind of structure?
Chronological order.
Chronological order. All right? So now that I know that it is informational and I know that it's chronological order, my next step, because it is informational, is that I need to do what?
Write the main ideas in each paragraph.
I got to go to each paragraph and ask myself, what is this about? Okay? So looking at paragraph 1, read it to yourself and tell me if you can come up with the main idea of paragraph 1. All right, Jaylene?
When he was a little kid.
Okay. So this is his childhood. Right? Okay. All right. Next paragraph. As he grew up, Cousteau was not a good student. However, he was smart and quite curious about things that interested him. For example, as a teenager, he took apart a movie camera because he wanted to know how it worked. Okay, so Rylan, what do you think that's about?
Talked about his school year.
Okay, his education and his interest too, right? Because he took apart a movie camera because he wanted to know how it worked. Okay. Moving on to paragraph 3. 1933, Cousteau was nearly killed in a car accident. To recover from his injuries, he started to swim in the Mediterranean Sea each day. A friend lent him a pair of goggles so that he could get a closer look at the sea creatures, and Cousteau began to study sea life very closely at this time. So what would you say the main idea of paragraph 3 is? Maddie? Okay, so but what add to our passage. What is the most important information we get out of paragraph 3? Is it that he was nearly killed in a car accident? Or is it that he started to swim the Mediterranean Sea each day and he started looking at sea creatures? So what do we think it is? He started swimming and he became interested in sea creatures. So we're going to say he becomes interested in sea creatures. Okay? During World War II, Cousteau met an engineer named Emile Gagnon. Emile was also interested in sea because they wanted to study life underwater. Cousteau and Gagnon worked on a system that would allow them to stay under the water for longer times. Their first aqua lung device was a success. So what's the big thing we get out of paragraph 4? What's the big idea we get from paragraph 4, Justin?
The success of their invention.
Okay, it starts their inventions, right? Alright, so it's invention of aqua lung device. What do we call that today? Could be scuba gear. What is the thing that they put on the back of the oxygen tank? Okay, that's the oxygen tank that they take underwater to swim. All right, and then let's look at paragraph 5. Around this time, Cousteau also helped develop a camera that worked underwater. These two inventions helped Cousteau to film fact-based films about the sea. So what else, or what is our big thing that we take away from paragraph 5? A lot, huh? There's a lot to unpack on paragraph 5. That's a small paragraph, but it's a lot to unpack. So he invented a camera. These two inventions helped him to film his first 2 documentaries or fact-based films about the sea. So would we say that this paragraph could have 2 main ideas? Because it talks about his second invention, which is the camera underwater, and how he used his inventions, the aqua lung device as well as the underwater camera, to start filming documentaries, right? So I think that that's kind of got 2 if I want to really look at it. So invention of underwater camera, and his inventions helping him to make documentaries. Okay? Now, looking at paragraph 6. In 1950, Cousteau turned a British sea vessel into a research ship and named it the Calypso. Working with the National Geographic Society, Cousteau used the Calypso to film several more films about the sea. So what does paragraph 6 bring to us? What does paragraph 6 bring to us, Justin?
The Calypso.
The Calypso. Okay? Now, moving to the back page. His television series, The Undersea World of Jacques Cousteau, was launched in 1968. I wonder if that's what Mrs. Myers was wanting them to go home and watch. Because the time frame is kind of about the same, because it says in 1968, he launched his underwater or Undersea World of Jacques Cousteau, which was a television series that ran for 9 years. So I bet that Mrs. Myers was probably wanting them to go home and watch that, right?
Probably.
See how that connection we made there?
Yes, it said something about the scuba diving.
So how is Jacques Cousteau connected to our story that we're reading, our Bridge to Terabithia?
Because of the show. The show is Mr. Myers wanted me to watch it.
Mrs. Myers wanted him to watch it on TV and write a report, and that is when we find out that Leslie does not have a TV, and that opens the door for girls to start teasing her. Okay? So back to this, what is the main idea of paragraph 7? What do we learn from there? All right, his TV series. All right. And then through his work, Cousteau began to see how human activity was hurting the oceans. He became an environmental activist, which is the person who raises awareness about issues that harm the environment. So we've seen him as an inventor. We've seen him as a filmmaker. So now what are we seeing him as?
As a lifesaver. I mean, scoop it out. Animal saver.
What does it say? Environmental activist. All right? He becomes an environmental activist for the ocean. Okay? 9, over the next few decades, Cousteau wrote several books and made many films. He worked hard to get his message about the oceans to as many people as possible. He founded the Cousteau Society in 1973 to raise money and awareness all around the world. So what does paragraph 9 bring to this passage? What do we learn in paragraph 9? What is it mostly about? All right, Aaliyah?
So wrote several books about the many how he made the many films.
All right, but what was he trying to do?
Raise money for the awareness.
He was trying to make people see. It says here he worked hard to get his message about the oceans to as many people as possible. So what is he trying to do here?
He's trying to
Raise,
money.
oh, not money, but awareness. Raise awareness. These are ways that he raised awareness. Making you aware that something is going on, making you understand it, that it's happening, bringing your attention to it. Okay? So raise awareness about oceans. Want to protect them. And then 10, in 1996, the Calypso was accidentally destroyed. When it was hit by a larger ship, he began raising funds to build a new ship. But before he was able to make that happen, he died. And he was 87 years old. The world was saddened by his death, but grateful for his many contributions to science. So, what do we find out in paragraph 10? Okay, he does. But what does he die doing? He dies trying to fix a ship. He dies trying to build a new ship.
That's 24 years ago.
All right. So that is our main idea for each paragraph in Jacques Cousteau. Okay?